The phone slipped from my trembling fingers, clattering against the hardwood floor I had installed with my own hands 23 years ago. Every plank told a story of sweat, dreams, and the promise of family legacy. Now those same floors echoed with the cruel laughter of my daughter Sarah and her husband Marcus, their voices still drifting through the forgotten call. "He's becoming such a burden, Marcus. Did you hear him tonight? He left the gas stove on again." "It's time, Sarah. The assisted living facility we looked at isn't too expensive, and with the house worth nearly $1 million now." "Exactly. We could finally buy that place in Aspen we've been dreaming about. Dad has no idea we're planning this." I sat frozen in Margaret's old reading chair, the leather worn smooth from decades of her evening ritual with mystery novels and chamomile tea. The grandfather clock in the hallway, her gift for our 20th anniversary, ticked steadily in the growing silence, each second marking the death of trust I'd held sacred for 67 years. My name is William Chen, and until 5 minutes ago, I believed my daughter loved me. The house felt different after that phone call, as if the walls themselves had absorbed the betrayal and were holding their breath. I'd built this place in 1998, every beam and joint measured twice, cut once, the way my father taught me during our weekend projects when I was Sarah's age. Back then, craftsmanship mattered. Back then, family meant something. Margaret and I had saved for 7 years to buy this lot in Thornfield, a quiet suburb where children rode bikes on safe streets and neighbors knew each other's names. We were young then, full of hope and architectural dreams sketched on napkins over dinner at the local diner. Sarah was just a whisper of possibility, a maybe someday conversation that made Margaret's eyes sparkle with anticipation. I walked through the rooms like a stranger assessing property value, seeing what Sarah and Marcus saw: square footage, market potential, liquid assets waiting to be claimed. In the kitchen, I ran my weathered hands along the granite countertops I'd installed myself, working by lamplight after 10-hour days at the construction company. Margaret had chosen the pattern, charcoal gray with silver veins that caught the morning sun like captured lightning. The living room still held the ghost of Christmas mornings. I could see 4-year-old Sarah's face lighting up at the sight of the dollhouse I'd spent months building in the garage, a perfect replica of our home down to the tiny bay window I'd crafted for her imaginary bedroom. Margaret had sewn miniature curtains, her fingers patient with each delicate stitch. "Daddy, it looks just like our house," Sarah had squealed, her small hands tracing the miniature details with wonder. That bay window had cost us 6 months of overtime. Margaret had seen it in a home magazine and fallen in love with the idea of reading there in the afternoon light. I'd taught myself new angles, measured and remeasured until my back ached from crawling around the frame. "William, we can't afford this," Margaret had worried, watching me mark measurements on the wall. "If you want it, you'll have it," I'd promised. "I'll make it work." And I had made it work, just like I'd made everything work for our family. Upstairs, Sarah's childhood bedroom remained unchanged. Soft lavender walls she'd chosen for her sweet 16, still decorated with photos of high school friends and college memories frozen in time. This was where I'd rocked her through colicky nights as an infant, where Margaret and I had helped her with calculus homework at the white desk I'd built to fit perfectly under the window. The master bedroom held the heaviest memories. Margaret's side of the bed still bore her water glass on the nightstand, her bookmark still marking page 312 of the novel she'd never finish. I'd built the walk-in closets with my own hands, custom designed to accommodate Margaret's height perfectly. Her clothes still hung there, still carrying the faint scent of her jasmine perfume. This was the room where we'd planned our future, where we'd whispered about dreams for Sarah, where Margaret had died holding my hand, while machines beeped their final rhythm around us, Promise me you won't let them take advantage of you, she'd said near the end, her voice barely audible above the medical equipment. You're too generous, William, too trusting. Promise me you'll take care of yourself. I'd promised, but I hadn't kept that promise, had I? In my home office, I found the folder of construction photos Margaret had lovingly organized. Pictures of me laying the foundation in the spring of 1998, 25 years younger and 40 pounds stronger. Me and my crew installing the frame, while Margaret, belly just beginning to show with Sarah, brought us lemonade on sweltering summer days. The financial records from those years told a story the photos couldn't capture. Second mortgage to buy materials, personal loan from my brother to cover labor costs, Margaret taking a part-time job at the elementary school to help with expenses. We'd eaten rice and beans for months, driven cars held together with determination and prayer. But we'd built this house with our sweat, our sacrifice, our overwhelming love for each other and the family we were creating. Now Sarah, the baby who'd taken her first steps in that kitchen, the child who'd played in the backyard I'd landscaped by hand, wanted to sell it all and warehouse me like inconvenient furniture. I spent the night digging through 25 years of financial records, each receipt a testament to love expressed through sacrifice. The university tuition payments, $52,000 over 4 years for Sarah's marketing degree. I remembered those double shifts, coming home with concrete dust in my hair and plaster, embedded under my fingernails. Margaret would have coffee waiting and would massage my shoulders while I calculated how to afford Sarah's spring semester. "William, you're working yourself to death," she'd said one night, watching me struggle with the bills at this very kitchen table. "She deserves better than we had, Margaret. She's smart enough for anything." Margaret had kissed the top of my head, her lips soft against my hair. "Just don't give her so much that she forgets gratitude." I should have listened. God help me, I should have listened. The wedding receipts were there too. $38,000 for one day. I'd told Sarah we could afford $7,000, maybe $10,000 if we stretched. But she'd cried about wanting her dream wedding. I'd worked weekends for 8 months, installing hardwood floors for a contractor friend who paid me under the table. "Daddy, you're the most wonderful father in the world," she'd whispered during our dance, her head on my shoulder, her wedding dress rustling against my rented tuxedo. I'll never forget this. But she had forgotten. Just like she'd forgotten who co-signed her first car loan when her credit wasn't established. Just like she'd forgotten who made the phone calls to secure her that marketing position when she was unemployed for 10 months after graduation. The bank statements from 3 years ago told another story. After Marcus lost his financial planning position for reasons they never fully explained, they'd moved in temporarily, just until Marcus found something new. I'd never charged them rent. I'd absorbed the increased utility bills, bought groceries for 3 adults instead of one lonely widower. Marcus would pat my shoulder and call me the most generous man in Colorado. Sarah would hug me and promise, "Dad, we'll pay you back when we get established." They'd been established for 18 months now, both earning good salaries, both making more money than I ever had. But they'd never mentioned moving out, never mentioned repayment. The anniversary dinner I'd funded last month, 180 at that upscale steakhouse downtown, because Marcus said they deserved to celebrate. The car repair bill I'd covered when Marcus's BMW needed transmission work, $3,200 that emptied my emergency fund. "William's like a father to me," Marcus had told his friends at their last barbecue, his arm around my shoulders. "I'm blessed to have married into this family." I'd been proud, actually proud, to be the generous father-in-law, the man who provided for his family regardless of personal cost. Standing in the bedroom where Margaret had spent her final days, surrounded by everything we'd built together, I felt something fundamental shift inside me. The hurt remained, sharp as broken glass. But underneath it, something harder was crystallizing. They wanted to discard me and liquidate my life's work. They thought I was too old, too confused, too grateful for their attention to fight back. They were about to discover how wrong they were. I walked to my office and retrieved the business card I'd kept in my desk drawer for 4 years. Jonathan Mitchell, real estate attorney. Margaret had insisted we meet with him after her cancer diagnosis, just to ensure our affairs were properly organized. It was time for another consultation. The law offices of Mitchell & Associates occupied the 3rd floor of a contemporary glass building on Madison Avenue. I'd chosen my finest suit, the navy one Margaret had selected for Sarah's graduation, and arrived 20 minutes early, my hands steadier than they'd been in weeks. Jonathan Mitchell was older than I'd expected, perhaps 60, with silver hair and the patient demeanor of someone who'd navigated every family crisis imaginable. His office displayed law degrees alongside family photos, a wife, 3 grown children, a golden retriever, the kind of stable life Margaret and I had tried to create. "Mr. Chen, good to see you again." Jonathan poured coffee from a small machine, the rich aroma filling the space between legal documents and filing cabinets. "I remember you and Margaret fondly. My condolences on your loss." "Thank you." I accepted the coffee, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "I need to discuss something sensitive regarding my daughter and son-in-law." Jonathan settled behind his desk, pen ready. "I'm listening." I told him everything. The overheard phone call, their plans to sell my house and commit me to assisted living, their eagerness to spend my money on their Aspen dreams. Jonathan's expression never changed, but I noticed him shaking his head slightly when I described their enthusiasm for liquidating my assets. "Unfortunately, Mr. Chen, this scenario occurs more frequently than you'd imagine," Jonathan said, setting down his pen. "Adult children often assume they understand what's best for their aging parents, particularly when valuable assets are involved. But they can't actually force anything, can they? Legally, I mean. Let's establish the fundamentals. The house is titled in your name exclusively since your wife's passing, correct?" "That's right. Margaret and I owned it jointly, but when she died, it transferred to me automatically. Then legally speaking, your daughter and son-in-law have absolutely no claim to your property. They cannot sell it, cannot force you into a care facility, cannot make any decisions about your assets without your explicit written consent." Jonathan pulled a legal pad from his drawer and began making notes. "The house belongs to you. Period." Relief flooded through me, followed immediately by something sharper, more calculating. "So if I wanted to sell it myself?" "You could list it tomorrow if you chose to. It's your property, your decision." Jonathan looked up from his notes. "May I ask why you're considering that option?" I thought about Sarah's laughter when she'd called me a burden, about Marcus's cold calculation of my worth, about 25 years of sacrifice reduced to a real estate transaction. They think I'm helpless, confused. They think they can manage me like an inconvenient piece of property. My hands tightened around the coffee cup. Perhaps it's time I demonstrated exactly how sharp my mind really is. Jonathan was quiet for a moment, studying my expression with professional assessment. "Denver's housing market is exceptionally strong currently, particularly in your neighborhood. Properties are selling within days, often with cash offers exceeding asking price." He paused, considering his words carefully. "If you were serious about selling quickly, before your daughter and son-in-law return from their trip, it could absolutely happen." "How quickly?" "With the right buyer, and there are numerous investors seeking properties like yours. We could complete a sale within 10 days, possibly less." Jonathan leaned forward. "But Mr. Chen, this represents a major life decision. Once you sell, There's no reversing course. I thought about Margaret's final words, her warning about being too generous, too trusting. I thought about the house I'd built with my own hands, every custom detail crafted with love, now viewed by my own daughter as nothing more than a commodity. I built that house with my own hands, Mr. Mitchell. Every board, every nail, every custom feature. I know exactly what I'm doing. We spent the next hour discussing practicalities, market value estimates, cash buyer networks, legal requirements. Jonathan explained that he could have everything prepared within 24 hours if I was serious about proceeding. The consultation fee is $300, Jonathan said as I prepared to leave. If you decide to move forward, that applies toward my legal fees for the sale. I paid in cash, feeling more clear-headed than I had in months. Walking to my truck in the spring sunshine, I felt my phone vibrate. Sarah's name appeared on the screen, and for the first time since her betrayal, I smiled. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. I could picture her in some hotel conference room in Phoenix, probably checking her schedule, wondering why her grateful old father wasn't eagerly answering her call. Let her wonder. Let her and Marcus finalize their plans about my future, my house, my life. They were about to receive the surprise of their lives. The phone kept ringing as I climbed into my truck, Jonathan Mitchell's business card secure in my wallet and a plan crystallizing in my mind that would teach my ungrateful daughter exactly who she was dealing with. I had built my life from nothing once before. I could certainly dismantle it and rebuild it on my own terms. By the time I reached my driveway, confidence had replaced the tremor in my hands. Jonathan's words echoed in my mind. It's your property, your decision. 25 years of doubt and second-guessing had lifted like morning fog over the mountains. I was unlocking my front door when the phone rang again. Through the window, I could see it vibrating against the kitchen counter where I'd left it. Sarah's name glowed on the screen, and for the first time since her betrayal, I felt something resembling satisfaction. Let her wonder for a moment. Let her question why her grateful old father wasn't scrambling to answer. I poured myself a glass of water, took a deep breath, and answered on the 6th ring. "Dad, there you are." Sarah's voice sparkled with manufactured enthusiasm. "I was starting to worry when you didn't answer earlier." "Sorry, sweetheart. I was out handling some business." I kept my tone warm, grandfatherly. "How's Phoenix treating you?" "Oh, you know how these conferences are. But listen, I have wonderful news." She paused for dramatic effect. "Marcus and I have been planning something very special for you." I gripped the phone tighter, my knuckles whitening. "We want to arrange a vacation for you. You deserve rest and relaxation after everything you've endured since Mom died." Her voice carried that practiced sympathy I now recognized as manipulation. "There's this beautiful place we found. It's like a resort, but with medical staff available, just in case you need anything." A resort with medical staff. My jaw clenched so hard I thought my teeth might crack. "That sounds lovely, sweetheart. You really didn't need to go to such trouble." "Nonsense, Dad. Your family." Marcus's voice came through the background. He must have been listening on speaker. "We've already made all the arrangements." "When were you thinking?" I managed, knowing full well they wanted me gone before they returned to claim their inheritance. "Well, we should be back by Friday," Sarah said. "We were hoping you could be ready by then. Just pack some clothes and personal items, you know. The essentials." The essentials? Not the photo albums Margaret had lovingly arranged. Not the furniture I'd built with my own hands. Just the essentials for an old man being shuffled off to die. "Actually, Sarah, I have a surprise for you, too, when you get back." "Oh, Dad, what kind of surprise?" She sounded genuinely pleased, probably imagining I'd signed papers or simplified their tasks somehow. I walked to the bay window I'd built for Margaret, looking out at the garden she'd planted, the porch swing where we'd spent countless evenings planning our future. "It's something I've been working on since our last conversation. I think you'll be very surprised." "You're so sweet, Dad. We'll discuss everything when we get home. Get some rest, and we'll handle everything else." Sweet. She called me sweet while planning to steal my life. "I will, sweetheart. I love you." "Love you too, Dad. See you Friday." The line went dead, and I set the phone down with hands steadier than they'd been in weeks. I walked to my home office and opened my laptop, the screen illuminating possibilities I'd never considered before. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for just a moment before I typed, "Real estate agents Denver fast sale." The search results filled my screen like ammunition in a war I was finally ready to fight. I'd always been methodical. 28 years as a structural engineer had taught me to research thoroughly before making any decision. Tonight, that methodical nature would serve a different purpose entirely. I studied agent profiles, comparing success rates and client testimonials the way I used to evaluate construction materials. Cherry Hills, Highlands Ranch, Stapleton, neighborhoods where houses sold for the kind of money Sarah and Marcus were already spending in their dreams. One name appeared consistently in the top results. Rebecca Torres, 41 years old, specialized in rapid sales, averaged 15 days from listing to closing. Her photo showed professional confidence and determined eyes, the kind of person who could make things happen quickly. Her testimonials were exactly what I needed to see. "Rebecca sold our house in 4 days. Cash buyer arranged within 36 hours. Seamless closing, no complications. When we needed to relocate for work, Rebecca made the impossible happen. Listed Friday, sold Monday." I stared at her direct phone number prominently displayed beneath her credentials. This was the moment that would set everything in motion. Once I made this call, there would be no returning to being the grateful, manageable old man my daughter expected. Margaret's photo on my desk seemed to be watching me. I could almost hear her voice. "William, are you certain about this?" I was certain, more certain than I'd been about anything since her funeral. I dialed Rebecca Torres' number with steady fingers. "Torres Real Estate, Rebecca speaking. How can I help you?" "Ms. Torres, my name is William Chen. I'm interested in selling my house very quickly. How fast can these transactions actually happen?" "Well, Mr. Chen, that depends on several factors. But with the right property and pricing strategy, I've closed deals in as little as 7 days with cash buyers. What kind of timeline are you considering?" 7 days? My heart pounded against my ribs. 7 days? That quickly? Absolutely. Denver's market is incredibly competitive right now, especially for well-maintained properties in established neighborhoods. Can you tell me about your house? I looked around my kitchen, seeing it through a buyer's eyes for the first time. 2-story, 3,600 square feet, built in 1998, Thornfield area. 3 bedrooms, 3 full baths. I've maintained it meticulously. Did most of the work myself over the years. Rebecca's voice sharpened with interest. That sounds exactly like what several of my investors are seeking. Original owner, well-maintained, established, neighborhood. Those are premium selling points. Would you be available for a property assessment? How quickly could you come by? I can be there this afternoon if you're available. Say, Ikisat? I glanced at the clock. It was just past 11 a.m. 2 o'clock works perfectly. Let me give you the address. After I hung up, I sat in the sudden quiet of my kitchen, the magnitude of what I'd set in motion beginning to settle in my chest. In 3 hours, a stranger would walk through the house Margaret and I had built together, assigning dollar values to our memories. I spent the next 2 hours cleaning with obsessive attention to detail. Old habits from Margaret's time when she'd insist the house be immaculate for any visitor. I dusted the bay window, straightened the cushions on the couch, ensured every surface gleamed. But this cleaning felt different. I wasn't preparing for guests. I was preparing for an evaluation. At exactly 2 o'clock, the doorbell rang. I smoothed my shirt, took a deep breath that carried the scent of Margaret's lavender sachets still tucked in the linen closet, and walked toward the front door. My hand trembled slightly as it closed around the brass doorknob I'd installed myself 18 years ago. Beyond this door waited either my liberation or my damnation. I turned the handle and opened the door to my future. Rebecca Torres looked exactly like her photo, professional but approachable, early 40s, with the kind of confident bearing that came from years of successful transactions. She carried a leather portfolio and tablet, and the moment she stepped inside, her eyes widened appreciatively. Wow! She stopped in my entryway, her gaze traveling up the crown molding I'd installed by hand to the hardwood floors Margaret and I had selected together. "Mr. Chen, this is exactly what I was hoping to see." I watched her take in the details. The way the afternoon light streamed through Margaret's bay window, the seamless flow from living room to dining room that I'd achieved by removing a load-bearing wall and installing a custom beam. Her appreciation was genuine, professional. "You weren't exaggerating about maintaining this place." She pulled out her tablet and started taking photos. "These hardwood floors, original?" "Installed them myself in 2000. Margaret wanted something that would endure, so we went with 3/4-inch solid oak." I found myself falling into the familiar rhythm of discussing my craftsmanship, proud despite everything that was happening. "And this kitchen?" Rebecca stopped at the granite countertop, running her hand along the edge. "Custom installation, every inch. Margaret chose the pattern. She said the silver veining reminded her of captured lightning." My voice caught slightly. "I spent 4 weekends getting the measurements perfect." Rebecca was typing notes on her tablet, photographing the custom cabinets, testing faucets and outlets with the thoroughness of someone who understood what buyers valued. "Mr. Chen, I have to be honest with you. In my 18 years doing this, I rarely encounter properties maintained to this standard. I'm an engineer, was an engineer. I believe in building things correctly the first time." "It shows." She gestured toward the living room. "May I continue?" I nodded, following her as she admired the open floor plan, the built-in bookcases flanking the fireplace, the way Margaret's decorating choices had transformed our construction project into a home. "This bay window, custom work?" "Built it for my wife. She wanted a reading nook." I could picture her there with her historical novels and afternoon tea, her reading glasses perched on her nose, completely absorbed in another world. Rebecca was taking measurements now, her excitement barely contained. "Mr. Chen, I need to show you some comparable sales." She pulled up listings on her tablet. "Similar properties in this area have been selling for $780,000 to $850,000. My chest tightened. That was more than Sarah and Marcus had estimated in their cruel conversation. "But given the condition and custom features of your home, I'm thinking we price it at $820,000. That should move it quickly while securing you top dollar." $820,000. I sat down heavily in Margaret's reading chair, the numbers spinning in my head. "That much?" I managed. "Mr. Chen, you're sitting on a gold mine. Properties like this don't come on the market often, especially not in this condition." Rebecca's voice carried the confidence of someone who knew her business. "I actually have an investment group that's been seeking exactly this type of property." "What kind of investment group?" "They specialize in high-quality rental properties in established neighborhoods. They pay cash, no financing contingencies, no repair negotiations. They can close in 8 business days. 8 business days. Sarah and Marcus would return from Phoenix in 6 days, expecting to find their grateful, manageable father ready to be shipped off to their resort. What's the catch? Why so fast? Rebecca smiled. No catch. Cash means no loan delays, no appraisal contingencies that could derail the deal. They conduct their own inspections, but frankly, your house is in better condition than most new construction I see. I looked around the living room where Sarah had taken her first steps, where Margaret and I had hosted Christmas mornings and birthday parties and quiet Sunday afternoons reading the paper together. When would I need to be out? Standard contract gives you 30 days after closing, but they're flexible if you need more time. The main thing is securing clear title and completing the paperwork. I thought about Sarah's voice on the phone, calling me sweet while planning to steal my life. I thought about Marcus's cold calculation, reducing me to a burden to be managed. I thought about Margaret's warning about being too generous, too trusting. Let's do it. Rebecca's professional mask slipped for just a moment, revealing genuine excitement. Excellent choice, Mr. Chen. Let me contact them right now. I watched her dial, heard her describe my property with the enthusiasm of someone who discovered buried treasure. Thornfield area, original owner, immaculate condition, custom features throughout. She ended the call with a broad smile. They want to move forward immediately. I can have the initial contracts ready by tomorrow morning. The sun was setting through Margaret's bay window, casting golden light across the room where I just agreed to sell 25 years of my life. But for the first time since that devastating phone call, I felt something that had been missing for too long. Control. How does 9 a.m. sound? The question hung in the air like smoke, and I realized Rebecca was waiting for an answer that would change everything. The grandfather clock in the hallway, Margaret's 20th anniversary gift to me, ticked steadily in the silence. 9 a.m. sounds perfect. After Rebecca left with promises of contracts and closing timelines, I stood alone in the house that would soon belong to someone else. The evening light through Margaret's windows painted everything golden, like a photograph of a life I was about to leave behind. But it wasn't sadness I felt. It was anticipation. Rebecca arrived the next morning with contracts, a notary, and coffee for everyone. The kind of professional efficiency I'd always respected. I read every line with a thoroughness that had made me a good engineer, checking details the way I used to review blueprints. Sale price, $820,000. Cash purchase. Closing date, 8 business days from signing. The notary, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, walked me through each signature. Minimal contingencies, just the title search and final walkthrough. You can remain in the house for 30 days after closing if needed. That's correct, Mr. Chen. Though most sellers prefer to relocate sooner rather than later, just for peace of mind. Peace of mind? I almost laughed. The only peace of mind I'd have would come from seeing Sarah and Marcus's faces when they discovered what their burden had accomplished. I signed my name with steady hands, and just like that, the process was in motion. The first 3 days passed in a blur of paperwork and inspections. The title company began their search through decades of records. The investors sent their team, a polite crew, who admired my workmanship and found nothing to criticize. Your father-in-law really knew what he was doing, one of them told the other, since they assumed I was already gone. These floors, this electrical work, all top quality. Days 4 through 6 transformed me into a man with a secret mission. I researched apartments online, seeking something modest but comfortable. Somewhere I could start over with nearly $800,000 in the bank. I found a place in Riverdale, a senior community with walking trails and a community center, the kind of place Margaret and I had sometimes discussed for our golden years. I also contacted storage facilities, planning which of Margaret's belongings I'd keep and which I'd have to leave for the new owners. Her china, definitely. Her jewelry box, the photo albums, the essentials of a life lived together. Days 7 through 9 brought a strange confidence I hadn't felt in years. Each morning I woke knowing I was one step closer to freedom, one step closer to showing my daughter that her confused old father was sharper than she'd ever imagined. Mrs. Rodriguez from next door noticed the activity, asked about the inspectors and official-looking people. Just some maintenance being done, I told her, hating the half-truth, but knowing the full truth would spread through the neighborhood before I was ready. On day 7, Rebecca called with final confirmation. Everything's on track for tomorrow's closing, Mr. Chen. The buyers are thrilled with the inspection results. Wire transfer will be completed the same day. You'll have access to funds immediately. That night I packed a single suitcase with clothes and personal items, not because I was moving yet, but because I wanted to be prepared for anything. I looked at Margaret's photo on our dresser and whispered, "I hope you understand what I'm doing." Friday morning arrived bright and clear, the kind of spring day Margaret used to say was Denver at its finest. I dressed carefully in my best suit, not the funeral suit, but the charcoal one Margaret had selected for me to wear to Sarah's college graduation. The title company office buzzed with professional efficiency and congratulations. The buyers were represented by their attorney, a sharp woman who double-checked every document. Rebecca handled the paperwork like a conductor leading an orchestra. "Mr. Chen, if you'll sign here and here, initial there." Each signature felt like cutting a chain. The deed transfer, the settlement statement, the final acknowledgement that 1247 Oakwood Drive no longer belonged to William Chen. And this is your wire transfer confirmation. $820,000 less closing costs has been deposited to your account. I stared at the numbers on the paper. More money than I'd ever seen in one place. More money than Sarah and Marcus had dreamed their burden could access. We shook hands all around, everyone pleased with the smooth transaction. Rebecca walked me to my truck, promising to stay in touch if I ever needed real estate services again. "You made the right choice, Mr. Chen. Sometimes a fresh start is exactly what we need." I drove home through neighborhoods I'd known for 25 years, past the elementary school where Sarah had learned to read, past the park where Margaret and I used to walk every Sunday morning. But instead of nostalgia, I felt liberation. I pulled into my driveway and sat in my truck, looking at the house that was no longer mine. The keys to the front door felt heavy in my palm. But tomorrow, I'd hand them over to the new owners and walk away from this chapter of my life. Sarah and Marcus were due back from Phoenix in 2 days. They'd arrive expecting to find their grateful, manageable father ready to be packed off to their resort. Instead, they were going to find an empty house and a lesson they'd never forget. I climbed out of my truck and walked toward my front door, reaching for my phone to make the next call on a plan that was working better than I'd ever hoped. The locksmith arrived within 2 hours, a professional named Eddie who'd clearly seen every kind of security emergency Denver had to offer. "Security issue, sir?" he asked, studying my front door. "Change of ownership situation. Better safe than sorry." He nodded like he'd heard it before and got to work. I watched him remove the locks I'd installed 18 years ago, the brass hardware Margaret had chosen, because it matched our door knocker. "These are quality locks," Eddie commented as he worked. "Somebody knew what they were doing when they installed them." That was me. I believe in doing things right. The new locks were silver instead of brass, modern instead of traditional. They clicked differently when Eddie tested them, a sharper, more mechanical sound than the old ones. "Here are your new keys, sir. 3 copies of each. Front door, back door, and garage side entrance." Eddie handed me a ring of keys that felt foreign in my palm. That'll be $380 with the emergency fee. I paid in cash from my wallet, knowing there would be no paper trail connecting William Chen to this transaction. After Eddie left, I stood in my former house and began the hardest part, packing 25 years of life into what I could carry. Margaret's jewelry box went into my suitcase first, along with our wedding photos and the novel she'd been reading when she died. Bookmark still marking page 312. My engineering certificates, our important documents, Margaret's favorite cookbook with handwritten notes in the margins. I left almost everything else. The furniture that told our story would have to stay. The photo albums chronicling Sarah's childhood. Margaret's clothes still hanging in our closet, still carrying the faint scent of her perfume. While I packed, I called Sunset Manor Apartments, explaining that I needed a furnished one-bedroom immediately. "We have a lovely unit available for immediate occupancy," said Mrs. Kim, the property manager. "Month-to-month lease if you prefer flexibility." "I'll take it." I met Mrs. Kim at the apartment complex an hour later. A modest but clean building designed for seniors with a community center and well-maintained grounds. The one-bedroom unit was simple but comfortable, furnished with everything I needed to start over. "Cash deposit's perfectly fine, Mr. Chen. When would you like to move in?" "Tonight." Mrs. Kim's eyebrows rose slightly, but she didn't ask questions. I signed the lease and handed over first month's rent plus deposit, nearly $2,800 that would have seemed impossible to spend casually just 3 weeks ago. Loading my car in the gathering dusk, I caught Mrs. Rodriguez watching from her window. She waved again, and I felt the weight of all the relationships I was severing, all the connections Sarah and Marcus had forced me to cut. I took one last walk through the empty rooms, my footsteps echoing differently now that the house belonged to someone else. In the kitchen where Margaret had taught Sarah to bake Christmas cookies. In the living room where we'd watch Sarah open presents on Christmas morning. In our bedroom where Margaret had taken her last breath while I held her hand. "I'm sorry, honey," I said aloud to Margaret's memory, "but you'd understand. You always said I was too generous for my own good." I locked the new locks and drove away from Oakwood Drive for what might be the last time, my rearview mirror filled with the life I was leaving behind. The sun was setting when I arrived at Sunset Manor, my car loaded with the essentials of my existence. I carried my suitcase to my new front door, fumbling with unfamiliar keys to unfamiliar locks. Inside the small apartment, I dropped my suitcase and immediately reached for my phone. The final phase of my plan required one more call, one more piece of the puzzle that would give Sarah and Marcus the surprise of their lives. The apartment felt like a hotel room, functional but soulless, with generic furniture and the lingering smell of industrial carpet cleaner. I stood holding my phone, Margaret's photo already positioned on the nightstand, trying to decide which bank would best protect nearly $800,000 from the children who thought they deserved it. I opened my laptop on the small dining table and began researching banks that specialized in large deposits. Colorado Community Bank caught my attention, smaller than the major chains, with a focus on personal service and discretion. Exactly what I needed. Colorado Community Bank, Private Banking Division, this is David Morrison. "Mr. Morrison, my name is William Chen. I need to open an account for a substantial deposit, around $800,000. The brief pause on the other end told me David was recalculating his day. "We'd be absolutely delighted to work with you, Mr. Chen. When would be convenient for a consultation?" "Monday morning, 9 a.m. "Perfect. I'll have everything prepared." The weekend stretched ahead of me like uncharted territory. I'd never lived anywhere but the house Margaret and I built together. This tiny apartment felt like exile, but it was exile by choice. My choice, not theirs. Saturday morning, I made coffee in the unfamiliar kitchenette and methodically unpacked my belongings. Margaret's jewelry box on the dresser, my engineering awards on the bookshelf, our wedding photo beside the bed where I'd sleep alone in a space that had never known Margaret's presence. I drove to the grocery store and bought food for one person, simple meals, nothing that required the kind of elaborate cooking Margaret had loved. The checkout clerk, a young man with kind eyes, asked if I was new to the area. Just moved in, I told him, starting fresh. Sunday morning, I discovered a coffee shop called Mountain Perks, 3 blocks from my apartment. The barista, a young woman named Jessica with artistic tattoos, made the kind of strong coffee I preferred. "You're new around here," she observed, not prying, just friendly. "Retired engineer," I said, looking for a quieter life. "Well, you found the right neighborhood for that. Most of our customers are pretty chill." I sat by the window with my coffee, watching people walk dogs and push strollers, living the kind of normal Sunday morning that Margaret and I used to treasure. But instead of sadness, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: anticipation. Monday morning, I dressed in my best suit and drove to Colorado Community Bank. David Morrison was younger than I'd expected, maybe 45, with the kind of professional warmth that came from handling people's life savings. "Mr. Chen, what brings you to Colorado Community Bank?" "I recently sold my house. I need a fresh start with an institution that values personal relationships over transaction fees." David nodded with genuine understanding. "We specialize in exactly that kind of service. Tell me about your needs." I explained my situation carefully, a widower who'd sold his family home and needed secure, accessible banking. David asked thoughtful questions, never prying beyond what was necessary for account setup. "I'll need to wire the funds from my previous bank," I explained. "No problem at all. We can initiate that transfer today and the funds should clear by Wednesday." David prepared the paperwork with quiet efficiency. Online banking, debit card, and checkbook, all standard services. Given the amount, I'd also recommend our premium account package for additional security features. I signed documents that made me an official client of Colorado Community Bank, customer number 627394, with access to nearly $800,000 that Sarah and Marcus would never see. Tuesday and Wednesday passed in the strange rhythm of my new routine. Morning coffee at Mountain Perks, where Jessica remembered my order and asked about my weekend. Afternoon walks through the neighborhood, discovering a small park with benches where other retirees fed pigeons and read newspapers. Wednesday afternoon, David called with the news I'd been waiting for. "Mr. Chen, your funds have cleared successfully. Your account is full, active." I hung up and looked around my small apartment, at Margaret's photo watching me from the nightstand, at the simple life I was building from the wreckage of my daughter's betrayal. For the first time since Margaret's death, I felt truly in control of my own destiny. Wednesday evening, I sat in my single chair, not Margaret's reading chair, not the recliner where I'd heard Sarah's betrayal, just a plain chair in a plain room that belonged entirely to me. I opened my laptop and typed mini surveillance cameras into the search bar. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, knowing that what I was about to order would capture the final act of my plan. Sarah and Marcus were returning on Friday, expecting to find their grateful old father ready to be managed. Instead, they were going to discover that their burden had become their biggest problem. The search results filled my screen with dozens of surveillance options, from obvious security cameras to devices disguised as everyday objects. After 40 minutes of research, I found what I needed: a wireless mini camera hidden inside what looked like a phone charger. The specifications were perfect for my engineering mind. Wi-Fi enabled with smartphone app control. Motion-activated recording. 15-hour battery life. Crystal clear video quality. Most importantly, it could stream live footage directly to my phone from anywhere with internet access. I ordered it with expedited shipping, paying the extra $35 to guarantee Thursday delivery. The total cost was $159, an amount that would have made me hesitate 3 weeks ago, but barely registered now. With the camera ordered, I turned to the next crucial element. The note that would explain everything to Sarah and Marcus when they discovered their keys no longer worked. The first draft was too angry, too raw with the pain of their betrayal. The second was too cold, missing the personal devastation they'd caused. By the third draft, I found the right tone, dignified but devastating, loving but final. I wrote in my careful engineer's handwriting, the penmanship Margaret had always admired. Dear Sarah and Marcus, if you're reading this, it means my plan worked perfectly. I heard your phone conversation about putting me in a nursing home because I'm becoming a burden. I heard you calculating how much money you'd make selling my house. The house has been sold for $820,000 cash. The money is safely in my new bank account where it will stay. I've moved to a place where I'm appreciated, not tolerated. Don't worry about me. Worry about your own housing situation. Your belongings have been packed and are being stored at Denver Moving and Storage on Madison Avenue. You have 30 days to claim them before storage fees begin. I gave you everything I had for 43 years. You repaid me by planning to warehouse me so you could steal my life's work. I hope the lesson was worth the cost. Love. Dad, Thursday morning, the FedEx truck arrived at my apartment with a small box containing my surveillance equipment. I spent an hour in my kitchen testing the device and learning the smartphone app. The video quality was remarkably clear, the audio sharp enough to catch whispered conversations. Thursday afternoon, I drove to my former house for the last time. I used the garage door opener I'd never given Sarah and Marcus, parking inside to avoid questions from neighbors. My hand shook slightly as I approached the front door with my new keys. Inside, the house still smelled like home. Margaret's lavender sachets, the lemon oil I used on the wooden furniture, the faint residue of 25 years of family dinners. But there were new additions that made my chest tight. Sarah and Marcus's suitcases by the stairs, their mail scattered on the kitchen counter, evidence that they'd been treating my house as their personal storage facility while planning my exile. I positioned the camera charger by the front door outlet, angling it perfectly to capture anyone entering. The view through my phone app showed the entire entryway, including the spot where I planned to hang my note. I tested the motion detection, walking in and out of frame until I was satisfied the system would capture every moment of their return. Then I taped the envelope to the inside of the front door at eye level, where they couldn't possibly miss it. Standing in my living room one final time, I touched the mantel where Margaret's photo had sat for 23 years. The new owners would put their own family photos there, create their own memories in the rooms Margaret and I had filled with love. It's done, sweetheart, I whispered to Margaret's memory. Justice served. I locked the house with my new key, tested the camera feed one more time from my car, and drove back to my apartment. The motion detector was armed, the battery fully charged, and my phone ready to alert me the moment Sarah and Marcus discovered their keys no longer worked. Back in my apartment, I sat in my chair with my phone in my hand, watching the empty doorway through the camera app. The timestamp showed 7:15 p.m. Thursday evening. Tomorrow, Sarah and Marcus would return from their business trip, probably discussing their nursing home plans and already spending my money in their minds. They had no idea their grateful old father had become their worst nightmare. I woke Friday morning with the anticipation of a man about to witness justice after years of injustice. My coffee tasted better than it had in weeks, and even the small apartment felt less confining as I settled into my chair with my phone, the camera feed showing my empty former doorway. 4:45 p.m. They should arrive soon. I'd memorized their travel patterns. Sarah always insisted on leaving Phoenix by noon to avoid traffic, and Marcus drove exactly the speed limit. they'd be pulling into my driveway. Within the hour, I looked at Margaret's photo on my nightstand. I hope you understand what I'm doing, honey. They left me no choice. 5:20 p.m. My phone buzzed with motion detection. A black SUV, Marcus's car, pulled into the driveway of my former house. My heart hammered against my ribs as I watched the screen. Sarah stepped out first, stretching after the long drive. Marcus emerged from the driver's side, pulling their suitcases from the back. They moved with the casual confidence of people coming home to claim their inheritance. I watched them approach the front door, Sarah fishing her keys from her purse while Marcus set the luggage down. She inserted her key into the lock I'd had changed just 2 days ago. The key didn't turn. Sarah frowned, examining her key ring. She tried again, jiggling the key with growing frustration. "That's weird," her voice came through my phone speaker. "My key's not working." Marcus stepped closer, his expression shifting from tired to concerned. "Let me try the back door." I watched him disappear around the side of the house while Sarah continued struggling with the front lock. When Marcus returned 4 minutes later, his face had darkened with alarm. "Back door's locked too, and the garage remote isn't working." His voice carried the edge of panic I'd hoped to hear. "Sarah, someone changed these locks." "What? That's impossible. Dad doesn't even know any locksmiths." Marcus studied the front door more carefully, his financial advisor's mind recognizing trouble when he saw it. "These are brand new locks. This isn't an accident." Sarah pulled out her phone with shaking fingers. "I'm calling Dad." I watched her dial my old landline, the number I'd had disconnected 4 days ago. After several rings, her face crumpled with confusion. No answer. It's not even going to voicemail. Try his cell phone. He doesn't have a cell phone, remember? We talked about getting him one for emergencies. Her voice cracked with the first hint of real fear. Marcus was examining the windows now, his earlier confidence completely evaporated. "There, that one's unlocked. I can boost you up." I watched my daughter climb through the kitchen window I'd deliberately left unlatched, her business suit catching on the frame. She disappeared inside, and moments later, the front door opened from within. Marcus entered with their suitcases, and both of them stopped dead when they saw the white envelope taped to the door at eye level. Sarah's hand trembled as she pulled down the envelope with her name and Marcus's written in my careful script. I leaned forward in my apartment chair, phone clutched in both hands, as she tore open the seal. Her eyes moved across my words, Marcus reading over her shoulder. I watched their faces change, confusion to shock, to disbelief, to horror. "He sold the house." Sarah's voice rose to a near shriek. "How could he do this to us?" Marcus snatched the note from her hands, reading it again as if the words might change. "That manipulative old bastard. He was playing us the whole time." $820,000, Sarah was crying now, her careful makeup streaking down her cheeks. "He kept it all. That money was supposed to be our future." "Your future," Marcus snapped, his mask of devoted son-in-law finally slipping. "This is your father, Sarah. You should have handled this better." "My fault?" She whirled on him, years of suppressed resentment boiling over. "You're the one who said he was becoming a burden. You're the one who pushed for the nursing home. Well, he was a burden. Look what he's done to us." Marcus gestured wildly around the room that was no longer theirs. "We're homeless. Our lease expires next week." The beautiful irony wasn't lost on me. They were fighting in my living room about being homeless, just as they'd planned to make me homeless in their nursing home. "Call a lawyer," Sarah said desperately. "There has to be something we can do. He can't just sell the house without telling us." "With what money?" Marcus's voice dripped with contempt. "In case you forgot, I lost my job 8 months ago, and your marketing salary barely covers our car payments." "Then get another job." Where do you think financial firms are lining up to hire advisors who got fired for questionable transactions? I watched my daughter's face crumble as she realized the full scope of their situation. No house, no inheritance, no savings, and Marcus's unemployable status finally revealed. "How could he be so cruel?" she whispered. "The same way you were cruel when you called him a burden and planned to warehouse him," Marcus shot back. "The old man was smarter than both of us." Through my phone screen, I watched them collapse into my old furniture that would be gone tomorrow when the new owners took possession. Sarah buried her face in her hands while Marcus stared at my note with the expression of a man who'd finally understood he'd been outplayed. I turned off the camera feed. I'd seen enough. Walking to my small kitchen, I opened the bottle of Margaret's favorite wine I'd saved from the house, a 2019 Bordeaux we'd been saving for a special occasion that never came. I poured myself a glass and raised it toward Margaret's photo. "To you, my love. Justice served." The wine tasted like victory. They'd learned what happens when you bite the hand that feeds you. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, probably Sarah trying to reach me through some new method. I deleted it without reading and powered off the phone completely. Walking to my window, I looked out at the Denver skyline painted gold by the setting sun. Somewhere across the city, my daughter and her husband were facing the consequences of their cruelty. Somewhere in my former house, they were learning that their burden had become their biggest problem. For the first time in 3 years since Margaret's death, I felt completely free. I was no longer anyone's burden. I was my own man again, with my own money, my own choices, and my own future stretching ahead, like an open road. William Chen had left the building, and he was never coming back. 6 months later, I received a letter forwarded from my old address. Sarah's handwriting on cream-colored stationery, the kind Margaret used to love. "Dad, I know you probably won't read this, but I had to try. Marcus and I separated 3 months ago. The stress of everything, the financial pressure, the reality of what we did to you, it destroyed us. I've been going to therapy, trying to understand how I became the kind of person who could treat her father the way I treated you. Dr. Martinez says I need to take responsibility for my actions without expecting forgiveness. You were right about everything. We were selfish, cruel, and entitled. We took your love for granted and repaid it with betrayal. There's no excuse for what we planned to do to you. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even know if you're alive or well. But I needed you to know that I understand now what we lost. Not just the money or the house, but something infinitely more valuable. Your trust, your love, your presence in my life. I'm working 2 jobs now, living in a studio apartment, learning what it means to support myself without taking from others. It's the first honest work I've done in years. If you ever decide you want to see me again, I'll be here. Not because I want anything from you, but because I finally understand what I threw away. I love you, Dad. I always did, even when I was too selfish to show it. Sarah. I read the letter 3 times, sitting in my comfortable chair in my comfortable apartment, surrounded by the life I'd built from the ashes of their betrayal. Then I folded it carefully and placed it in the drawer beside Margaret's jewelry box. Some lessons once learned change everything. Some bridges once burned can never be rebuilt. But some stories, even the painful ones, deserve to end with the possibility of redemption. I never wrote back, but I kept the letter. And sometimes, late at night when the apartment was quiet and Margaret's photo watched me from the nightstand, I thought about forgiveness and whether love could survive the kind of betrayal that cuts to the bone. The answer, I discovered, was complicated Like most things worth understanding,